All right, folks, tons to get to on today's show. One of the most historic geopolitical moments of our lifetime happening right now as Israel takes out the Iranian nuclear regime, takes out its top military leaders. We'll bring you all the operational details, all the intelligence spilling out into the public. We'll talk with sources on the ground in Israel, top military members, all the information coming up. Plus, Democrats continue to shout into the void. Senator Alex Padilla of California tried to crash a press conference by Christie Noem, Secretary of Homeland Security, and get some attention. And then his big moment got completely obliterated by the news cycle. So much coming up on today's show. So last night, Israel began striking targets inside Iran, striking a wide variety of targets in Iran. Those strikes have continued all the way into the daylight hours, which suggests that Israel has complete control of the skies of Iran, an astonishing geopolitical, unprecedented situation. Understand that Iran is located some 2,000 miles from the state of Israel, that Iran is a country of 90 million people, and Israel is a country of 9.8 million people, or thereabouts 2 million of whom are Arab. Israel is now projecting power 2,000 miles across a variety of countries from Syria to Iraq, all the way into the heart of Iran, striking sites in Tehran, taking out top IRGC commanders, taking out nuclear facilities. Here is a map of the situation as it currently stands, an interactive Iran nuclear sites map showing where they have been building. You can see that there are uranium mining facilities and suspected weaponization facilities in places like Natanz and a wide variety of other sites. Israel has been striking these all night long. Natanz has been reduced to rubble, according to contemporaneous reports. Sites have been struck in Isfahan, which is another area where they're supposedly building nuclear weapons. There are a wide variety of Iranian nuclear facilities around Tehran. Israel has been striking those all night long and into the morning hours. The video that has emerged is very clear. Here's video of mushroom clouds in Iran. Again, this sort of video is being put out there, not by the Israelis. It's being put out originally by Iranians who are on the ground. Again, many Iranians support all of this because the Iranian people in general do not support the Iranian revolutionary Ayatollah regime. And you can see the extent of the strikes. The strikes have continued all night long, again, into the morning hours. The IDF has announced the death of a wide variety of top IRGC officials, including the chief of staff of the Iranian Armed Forces, the commander of the IRGC, the commander of Iran's emergency command, all eliminated in the Israeli strikes across Iran by more than 200 fighter jets. So far, Iran's response has been minimal because their capacity has been absolutely degraded in extraordinary ways. In fact, there is video of Israeli Air Force jets refueling over Iranian airspace, which is absolutely unthinkable. And you have to understand that this is the culmination not only of decades of Iranian threats and Iranian attempts to develop a nuclear weapon, this is also the culmination of the Israeli campaign to chop off the arms of the Iranian octopus that has been ongoing since October 7th. After October 7th, Israel focused largely on finishing off Hamas in the Gaza Strip. Hamas is now on its last legs thanks to the work of the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. Hamas is no longer being supported by the UNRWA, which means they're being starved of funding and they're being starved of logistical support. Israel then went and completely defenestrated Hezbollah in one of the most stunning military operations in modern history with minimal loss of Israeli life. Israel not only knocked over the Hezbollah forces in Lebanon with their beeper attack, followed by the killing of Hassan Nasrallah, they hit Hezbollah so hard and destroyed so many of their weapons caches throughout Lebanon that Hezbollah was unable to defend the regime in Syria. That regime has fallen, of course, and the new regime is attempting to make agreements with the United States and with Israel, among others. Meanwhile, Israel has been heavily striking the Houthis in the south. All of these different terrorist groups are run directly from Tehran. They are run by Iran. And now, as President Trump attempted to negotiate a nuclear deal and became clearer and clearer that nuclear deal was undoable, he was never going to sign a JCPOA 2.0. And all of the people on the right who were complaining that President Trump wasn't being Barack Obama, that was not a MAGA position to be Barack Obama. It was never a MAGA position to be Barack Obama. Donald Trump said for 10 years that the JCPOA was the worst deal in American history. He was never going back to it as new details emerge as to the levels of coordination and talking between the United States and Israel over this current wave of attacks. It is emerging that it is rare. You know, you've listened to my show. It is very rare that I suggest that the president of the United States is playing 4D chess. This appears to be an actual real-life 4D chess move by the president of the United States to put Iran in a box, to keep them there, and then to allow for the possibility of Israel to destroy their nuclear facilities, large swaths of their military capability, with no risk to American troops. So President Trump was, in fact, asked by the Wall Street Journal about whether he was given a heads up by the Israelis. His actual response, quote, heads up? It wasn't a heads up. It was, we know what's going on. So again, President Trump being very clear about this. It appears the United States was not just read in on the operation. The extent to which this was, in fact, a 4D chess plan in which the appearance of negotiations with Steve Witkoff, for example, were actively put forward by the United States in order to sort of sucker the Iranians into going to sleep after it was clear that the Iranians were not making a deal. It's quite plausible that the United States was, in fact, involved in a sort of disinformation operation operated directly at the Iranian government. In any case, tactical surprise was not only achieved, it was achieved in historic fashion. And that looks a lot like 4D chess with plausible deniability from the United States. I mean, that's what it looks like from the outside and from all of the information that's being released, including from President Trump. So again, the extent of the strikes is extraordinary. The way that the operation went down is extraordinary as well. According to Axios, this strike was 8 months in the making. Axios reports Israel's stunning and sprawling operation overnight targeting Iran's nuclear facilities, missile sites, scientists, and generals followed 8 months of intensive clandestine preparations. The operation launched new war in the Middle East that could draw in the United States, says Axios. That's not true. It did not launch a new war in the Middle East. When people think of war, they think of full-scale ground invasion of Iraq. All the people today who are talking about a full-scale ground invasion of Iran are delusional, insane, or liars. That is not a thing that is happening. Israel, through air power alone, has left the Iranian regime on its knees. Israel has been attempting to eliminate Iran's nuclear and ballistic missile capabilities in an operation expected to last at least several days. The IDF is suggesting it may last all the way up to 2 weeks. Around 25 nuclear scientists are already dead. Israel targeted the entire top brass of the Iranian military. There is a story out that suggests that Israeli security officials said that Israel deliberately manipulated events to lure Iran's top air commanders into a meeting and then ensured they stayed there and then killed all of them with an airstrike. Many of the top commanders were killed in their beds because they were so sanguine about the possibility that Israel would do anything. And of course, they were wrong. Israel's Mossad had operatives on the ground conducting covert sabotage operations on missile and air defenses. In fact, the Mossad released video of its agents in Iran releasing sophisticated technology in order to target Iranian surface-to-surface air missiles. Here's some of that footage. You can see it happening here in the background. According to the Times of Israel, the Mossad spy agency revealed rare footage showing its actions against Iranian air defenses and ballistic missile launchers in Iran, showing 2 covert agents launching missiles from inside Iran. From inside Iran. The drones, apparently, this is insane. Okay, this is truly insane levels of competence. If you like competence, this is your morning. Mossad built a secret explosive drone base in Iran. In Iran, 2,000 miles away from Israel, Mossad built a drone base building explosive drones in Iran. And then the drones were used to strike ballistic missile launchers at a base near Tehran, preventing Iran from firing projectiles at Israel as the strikes began. Additionally, vehicles carrying weapon systems were smuggled into Iran. Those systems took out the Iranian air defenses and gave Israeli planes air supremacy and freedom of action over Iran. There's a third covert effort that involved involved Mossad commandos deploying precision missiles near anti-aircraft sites in central Iran. Highly coordinated, highly sophisticated. Folks, we have all the information coming to you. It is a fire hose of information, plus sources on the ground in Israel. The ambassador to the UN from Israel stops by as well, and updates on California, immigration rights, tons coming up. First, in business, they say you can have better, cheaper, or faster, but you really only get to pick 2. What if you could have all 3 at the same time? That's exactly what Cohere, Thomson Reuters, and Specialized Bikes have since they upgraded to the next generation of the cloud, Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. OCI is the blazing fast platform for your infrastructure, database, application development, and AI needs, where you can run any workload in a high availability, consistently high performance environment and spend less than you would with other clouds. How's it faster? OCI's block storage gives you more operations per second. Cheaper, OCI costs up to 50% less for compute, 70% less for storage, 80% less for networking. Better, in test after test, OCI customers report lower latency and higher bandwidth versus other clouds. This is the cloud built for AI and all your biggest workloads. Right now, with zero commitment, try OCI for free. Head to oracle.com/Shapiro. That's oracle.com/Shapiro. Also, Made in America means something to our country's private equity investors. When you invest $700 billion annually in American companies and the 13 million workers and families they support, you're investing in the success of Main Street. Over the last 8 years alone, America's private equity investors have contributed $5 trillion to the United States economy. That is money powering growth in manufacturing, tech, energy, and innovation. From strengthening supply chains to helping America lead in artificial intelligence, that kind of investment shapes our future. And it starts with private equity backing American ambition. Because investing in our people, our businesses, and our communities isn't just good for the economy, it's good for the country. Learn more about how private equity keeps American small businesses growing and thriving at investmentcouncil.org, paid for by the American Investment Council. According to Axios, the idea for an operation simultaneously targeting Iran's missile and nuclear program, which Netanyahu has described as existential threats to Israel, took hold after Iran struck Israel in October during a cycle of tit-for-tat escalation between the countries. Prime Minister Netanyahu ordered the military and intelligence services to begin planning. Also, Iran has been announcing continuously that they're upping their game with regard to their nuclear program. Israel has been preparing for the strike for months. According to Axios, the preparations alarmed some in the White House who worried Netanyahu might move even without a green light from Trump. These would be the so-called restrainers, who aren't interested just in restraining the United States from taking action, but interested in restraining Israel from taking action. Netanyahu assured Trump that he would not move without Trump knowing about it. The White House, for its part, told Netanyahu that if Israel attacked Iran, it would do so alone. Trump himself had said several times in recent days, including several hours before the strikes, he opposed an Israeli strike that could blow up the negotiations. But apparently, Trump has now revealed all. Two Israeli officials claimed that Trump and his aides were only pretending to oppose an Israeli attack in public. We had a clear U.S. green light, according to one. The goal was to convince Iran no attack was imminent and to make sure Iranians on Israel's target list would not actually move to new locations. In fact, according to Israeli officials, you remember there were reports earlier this week that were made that President Trump called up Netanyahu and tried to talk him out of a strike. Well, it turns out, in reality, the call likely dealt with coordination ahead of the attack. Now, the Trump administration has been publicly distancing itself, or at least was originally. So originally, Secretary of State Marco Rubio put out a statement saying, quote, "Tonight, Israel took unilateral action against Iran. We are not involved in strikes against Iran. Our top priority is protecting American forces in the region. Israel advised us they believe this action was necessary for its self-defense. President Trump and the administration have taken all necessary steps to protect our forces and remain in close contact with our regional partners. Let me be clear, Iran should not target U.S. interests or personnel." And so from Secretary Rubio's assessment, the idea was Israel acted alone, will act to defend Israel from missile or drone attack, which is the proper response, because you don't want this thing escalating even more. If thousands of Israeli civilians were to die, for example, in Iranian missile barrage, then Israel would take even harsher action that would presumably target the Iranian oil fields and perhaps the Ayatollahs themselves. Secretary of State also making clear that if Iran fires on American troops, that there will be hell to pay, and presumably the Ayatollahs themselves would be cooked physically by American armaments. So that was what Secretary Rubio was making clear. But this morning, President Trump put out a series of statements himself. First of all, he was talking to John Carl of ABC, and he says, quote, "I think it's been excellent. We gave them a chance," meaning Iran, "and they didn't take it. They got hit hard, very hard. They got hit about as hard as you're going to get hit. And there is more to come, a lot more." President Trump's first statement last night, quote, "I gave Iran chance after chance to make a deal. I told them in the strongest of words to just do it. But no matter how hard they tried, no matter how close they got, they just couldn't get it done. I told them it would be much worse than anything they know, anticipated, or were told. That the United States makes the best and most lethal military equipment anywhere in the world by far, and that Israel has a lot of it with much more to come, and they know how to use it. Certain Iranian hardliners spoke bravely, but they didn't know what was about to happen. They are all dead now." Whew. And it will only get worse. Remember peace through strength, folks? Remember peace through strength? This is what it looks like. This is what Trump's foreign policy looks like. It's what it's always looked like. Anyone who is surprised by this has been ignoring what President Trump has been saying and doing for his entire time as president of the United States. There's already been great death and destruction, but there is still time to make this slaughter, with the next already planned attacks being even more brutal, come to an end. Iran must make a deal before there is nothing left and save what was once known as the Iranian Empire. No more death, no more destruction. Just do it before it is too late. God bless you all. Now, the president did put out an even funnier statement last night. President Trump's first response to the Israeli attack was, quote, Iran cannot have a nuclear bomb. We hope to return to the negotiating table. We'll see. There are some people in the leadership who won't return. Subtle. There are some people in the leadership who won't return. That is true. And you can imagine the next negotiating session, going to have to be some new names that are learned. President Trump also made a statement this morning. 2 months ago, I gave Iran a 60-day ultimatum to make a deal. They should have done it. Today is day 61. I told them what to do, but they just couldn't get there. Now they have perhaps a second chance. Well, Iran has basically blown that second chance already. Reuters is reporting that they are full-scale pulling out of any sort of negotiation. There is no one to negotiate with at this point. Also, they actually have no leverage at this point. What Iran should do, if they had any brains at all, would be to come to President Trump on bended knee and beg him to give up their nuclear program in exchange for the Ayatollahs remaining alive and the regime not being threatened and end to sanctions and all the rest of this sort of stuff. Because right now, the Iranian regime does not have the forward operating capacity. They just don't. Again, you have to see this as the culmination of the Israeli efforts over the course of legitimately years. I mean, I think the most astonishing response thus far has come courtesy of Hezbollah. So Hezbollah, remember, is the forward operating wing of Iran. They were essentially the de facto government of Lebanon. They had taken over large swaths of Syria, and they were operating on behalf of the Assad regime. And Israel hit Hezbollah so hard that here is Hezbollah's statement about Iran being struck. Quote, the Lebanese group, this is from Al Jazeera, which of course is a Qatari propaganda outlet, meaning an Iranian proxy. The Lebanese group calls the strikes a dangerous escalation and an Israeli violation of all controls and rules under full American cover and sponsorship. A statement on Telegram said Hezbollah affirms this enemy abides by no logical laws and that it only knows the language of murder, fire, and destruction. They said the people and countries of the region must realize that if this aggression is not met with rejection, condemnation, and support for Iran and its people, this criminal entity will only increase its aggression and tyranny. Hezbollah expresses its full solidarity with the Islamic Republic of Iran, its leadership, and people in the face of this dangerous attack. That's the end of the statement. Now, normally what you might expect from Hezbollah, a gigantic terror group, is, and so we are joining in and firing rockets into northern Israel, or so we are joining in and we will be attempting an invasion of northern Israel. Instead, this is basically the high five drowning meme. For those who have not seen it, man drowning, putting up his hand out of the water, somebody else coming along and giving him a high five as he drowns. That's Hezbollah saying to Iran, good luck storming the castle, boys. Enjoy yourselves. The Lebanese government, which was so weak just a few months ago that they had no capacity to stand up to Hezbollah, has now informed Hezbollah it will not tolerate Hezbollah joining in Tehran's response because they are afraid that Israel will then strike in Beirut. According to Saudi news outlet Al Arabiya, the time when the organization bypassed the state in deciding to go to war is over. That is what the Lebanese government is now telling Hezbollah. That is where things stand. Perhaps the funniest reaction is the crocodile tears being shed by the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. No one is happier in the Middle East than the Saudis. The Saudis get to sit there and do nothing while the Israelis do all of their dirty work. Iran has threatened and bombed, actually, Saudi oil fields. Iran hates KSA. They hate Mohammed bin Salman. They hate the UAE and Bahrain. So the Saudis put out some weak form of condemnation. Quote, while the kingdom condemns these heinous attacks, it affirms the international community and Security Council bear a great responsibility to immediately halt this aggression. And they denounced the strikes on what they called the Brotherly Islamic Republic of Iran. Sure. Well, I can tell that that's not true. And the way that I can tell that that's not true is here is a list of countries that participated in intercepting Iranian missiles and drone attacks in response against Israel as of this morning. Israel, the United States, the UK, Saudi Arabia. Wait, Saudi's on that. Why would Saudi be on that list? I thought that they would be upset about the heinous Israeli aggression against Iran, but there they are shooting down drones that are aimed at Israel. Why, that's weird. Azerbaijan, Qatar, Jordan, Turkey, and the UAE. Qatar, of course, is doing so at the behest of the United States, where the United States has a major airbase. So, Iran, for its part, is still bloviating. The Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian said that Iran will not remain silent, warning a powerful response that will make the enemy regret its foolish act. Now, they've been doing this stuff for quite a while. They always suggest. They fly the red flag of revenge, the red flag of revenge. But the reality is that Iran's capacity has been so degraded that the possibility of a massive response seems to be shrinking moment by moment. Now, again, will Iran respond? It would be shocking if Iran did not respond. Truly shocking. And frankly, it's shocking they haven't so far. But their command and control structure has been so devastated that you can see why a delay is necessary. You can see why they don't seem to have the capacity at this point to pull off a major operation. It's a stunning Israeli operation. It's going to go on for days. We've been told by the IDF this can go on for days and days and days. That Israel is going to run continuous bombing raids against Iranian missile factories, against top scientists, against members of the Iranian military regime, the Revolutionary Guard Corps, against the rest of their nuclear facilities. Folks, tons coming up. More information on the United States. What exactly was the involvement between the United States and Israel? President Trump speaking out about that. Plus, we will be joined by the Israeli ambassador to the United Nations, by the former IDF spokesperson, and everything going on in California. And with that California senator who kind of just ran in like the Kool-Aid man to a presser by the Secretary of Homeland Security. Kind of funny. But you know what else is funny? When I started the Daily Wire, I thought the hard part would be creating great content. Turns out, dealing with all that behind the scenes stuff, hiring, HR policies, employee issues, that's the stuff that really eats your time. And I'm not alone. When you're a business owner, every second of your time is incredibly valuable. So don't waste your energy and risk losing money dealing with time-sucking payroll issues, office politics, and HR infractions. Focus on the stuff that matters most, running your business with help from Bambee. Here's what makes Bambee different. They give you access to your very own dedicated HR manager at a fraction of what it costs to employ somebody full-time. And get this, Bambee costs just $29 a month, whether you have 10, 75, or even 100 employees. If I had Bambee when I was first building my team, it would have saved me countless hours and headaches. Instead of getting bogged down with paperwork and compliance issues, I could have focused on growing the show, connecting with my audience. With Bambee's HR Autopilot, you'll never have to waste your valuable time getting into the weeds of HR policies, onboarding, or terminations. Plus, Bambee is month-to-month, no hidden fees. You can cancel anytime. Right now, get 1 month of Bambee for just $1. Go to Bambee.com, type in Ben Shapiro under podcast to schedule your first call with an HR manager right now. That's 1 month of Bambee for just $1 at BAMBEE.com. Ben Shapiro podcast. Also, okay, folks, let's say you already like shooting. Great. What if I told you you're only getting half the experience? Here's the reality. Shooting suppressed isn't just quieter. It is much more enjoyable. Less recoil, tighter groups, no more ears ringing like you just left a rock concert. Silencer Shop helps take your shooting experience from ordinary to extraordinary because your firearms should actually be fun and functional. Now, here's the good news. Silencer Shop is the easiest way to get a suppressor, period. They've helped more Americans get silencers than anyone else, and approval times, they're faster than ever. Their expert team helps with the paperwork, connects you to a local dealer, and gets you shooting suppressed without any hassle at all. Silencer Shop actually puts its money where its mouth is. They're one of the loudest voices fighting for your Second Amendment rights, backing real legislation, pushing for real change. Thank you, Silencer Shop, for fighting for our Second Amendment rights and for supporting the channel. Click the link in the description to learn more about shooting suppressed or visit youtube.com/Silencer Shop. Silencer Shop, because your rights and your ears are worth protecting. If you've never shot silence, you're missing out. You should go try it out. And again, Silencer Shop can make that happen for you. Again, click that link in the description and learn more about shooting suppressed or visit youtube.com/Silencer Shop. Israel will not live under the possibility of extermination from the Iranian government. They were not going to do that. That is something that Prime Minister Netanyahu made absolutely clear last night. He released a statement in Hebrew, of course, and then he released a statement in English. And here's what he had to say.
Moments ago, Israel launched Operation Rising Lion, a targeted military operation to roll back the Iranian threat to Israel's very survival. This operation will continue for as many days as it takes to remove this threat. For decades, the tyrants of Tehran have brazenly, openly called for Israel's destruction. They've backed up their genocidal rhetoric with a program to develop nuclear weapons. In recent years, Iran has produced enough highly enriched uranium for 9 atom bombs. 9. In recent months, Iran has taken steps that it has never taken before, steps to weaponize this enriched uranium. And if not stopped, Iran could produce a nuclear weapon in a very short time. It could be a year, it could be within a few months, less than a year. This is a clear and present danger to Israel's very survival. 80 years ago, the Jewish people were the victims of a Holocaust perpetrated by the Nazi regime. Today, the Jewish state refuses to be a victim of a nuclear Holocaust perpetrated by the Iranian regime. Now, as Prime Minister, I've made it clear time and again, Israel will never allow those who call for our annihilation to develop the means to achieve that goal. Tonight, Israel backs those words with action. We struck at the heart of Iran's nuclear enrichment program. We struck at the heart of Iran's nuclear weaponization program. We targeted Iran's main enrichment facility in Natanz. We targeted Iran's leading nuclear scientists working on the Iranian bomb. We also struck at the heart of Iran's ballistic missile program. Last year, Iran fired 300 ballistic missiles at Israel. Each of these missiles carries a ton of explosives and threatens the lives of hundreds of people. Soon, those missiles could carry a nuclear payload, threatening the lives not of hundreds, but of millions. Iran is gearing up to produce 10,000 of those ballistic missiles within 3 years. Now just imagine 10,000 tons of TNT landing on a country the size of New Jersey. This is an intolerable threat. It too must be stopped. Iran is now working.
Okay, so the bottom line here is that Iran has been threatening and threatening and threatening for decades. Israel did have a window of opportunity. That window was going to close. In the last round of fighting again, Iran had sent some 300 missiles aimed at Israel. Israel, in response, had taken out the S-300 batteries that were designed to shoot down Israeli Air Force planes. Israel successfully did that. The skies over Iran are clear. So clear, there were early reports that Iran had been attempting to send up its jets, which would have been the stupidest possible thing that they could do. The problem for Iran is that its Air Force is absolute trash. They just don't have any updated jets. So according to reports, the jets that Iran was activating were Su-24 military jets. Israel flies F-35s and F-16s. So I asked our sponsors over at Perplexity to compare and contrast these planes and who would win in an air battle, just so that we understand the differences in technology here. According to Perplexity, the Su-24, F-35, and F-16 represent distinct generations and roles in aerial combat. Here's a breakdown of their capabilities. According to Perplexity, the Sukhoi Su-24 Fencer is a tactical bomber for low-altitude strikes and ground attacks. It has essentially minimal agility, no stealth features. It is reliant on external support for survival in contested airspace. Meanwhile, the F-35 Lightning is a fifth-generation stealth multi-role fighter optimized for beyond visual range combat. It has sensor fusion that provides unmatched situational awareness. The F-16 Fighting Falcon is a fourth-generation multi-role air superiority fighter. It's been upgraded, by the way, by the Israelis. So what would happen in a combat scenario? Quote, the F-35 stealth and sensors would detect the Su-24 first, likely at 150 plus kilometers. Okay, just to be clear, what that means that Israel would see over the horizon 120 miles to see the Su-24 with the F-35. A single AIM-120D could engage before the radar even detects the F-35. So this wouldn't be an air battle. This would just be the plane goes up, the plane comes down. It's that simple. In close-range scenarios, the Su-24's poor maneuverability and lack of helmet-mounted cueing systems make it vulnerable to the F-35's high off-bore sight missiles. How about the F-16 versus the Su-24? Basically, it would not even be a contest. It would not even be a contest. The Su-24, designed for ground attack, lacks the survivability or countermeasures to evade advanced fighters. As seen in real-world engagements, non-stealthy bombers like the Su-24 are highly vulnerable to fourth and fifth generation fighters without heavy escort and electronic warfare support. Essentially, it would be a biplane against a modern military jet. And that is precisely, apparently, what happened. Again, we've been reading news statements for weeks in which the mullahs have been saying, we're not giving up our nuclear program come hell or high water. We are not going to stop developing nuclear weapons. We are not, under any circumstances, going to make a deal that ends with a denuclearized Iran. Again, Iran could have prevented this at any time. There's a point President Trump has made over and over and over. Iran could have stopped this at any time. All they had to do was say, fine, no nuclear program. And that would have been the end of it. The Trump administration wasn't even looking for them to stop developing ballistic missiles or funding terrorism. But they didn't. Instead, they decided they were going to keep pushing and keep pushing and keep pushing. And President Trump played this absolutely perfectly. Israel acted alone. Israel acted with its own capacity. Israel is doing this by itself. And the United States is saying, listen, Israel is our ally. Our interests and the Israeli interests align in Iran not having a nuclear weapon. But this is Israel's fight predominantly and foremost. And Israel is an independent country making its own decisions. And that is the thing that really matters here, is that Israel was saying to the entire region that if you screw with Israel, these will be the consequences. Joining us on the line to discuss all of this is Ambassador Danny Danon. He's Israel's ambassador to the United Nations. He is also a leading voice in the ruling Likud party, which is the head of the coalition government in Israel. Ambassador Danon, thanks so much for joining the show. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, Ben.
So first of all, why don't we start with what is the extent of the success that Israel has had in this attack so far? What do we know?
Well, it was an impressive operation. We haven't finished the job yet. We are determined to finish the job. Last night, more than 200 Israeli aircrafts flew all the way to Iran, attacked nuclear facilities, ballistic missile infrastructure, and we also assassinated the military leaders. For years, we heard discussions, debates. For the first time, we took actions. And I think today the world is a better place, a safer place, but we are not over yet. We expect very intense days ahead of us. Today in Israel, we embrace for the attack from Iran, and we are ready to continue with the operation.
So, Ambassador Danon, obviously a lot of questions in the last few weeks about the relationship between the United States and Israel, the conflict or coordination between the Israelis and the American government. What do you know, or what can you tell us about the levels of coordination between Israel and the American government? Obviously, the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, has said that Israel acted alone in all of this. President Trump has suggested that he did know that the operation was going to happen and that he had warned the Iranians that this was an eventuality if they did not come to the table with a proper offer. What is the level of coordination and conversation that was happening between Israel and the United States in the run-up to the attack?
Ben, we talk with the U.S., but at the end of the day, those kind of decisions we take by ourselves. We are the one who are at risk. We are the one who we saw that the missiles from Iran flew to Israel a few months ago. So it was an independent decision. And also when you look at the history, when we attacked the reactor in Iraq in the 80s, also it was made in Jerusalem, that decision. Also when we attacked the reactor in Syria. So I think, not only the U.S., but many countries will thank Israel for what we did last night. We took the initiative, but, you can hear even leaders from France and other countries saying that we had the right to defend ourselves. It was a preemptive attack. We didn't wait. You came to Israel many times after October 7th. You saw the atrocities. We learned the lesson. We are not going to wait for Iran to have a nuclear bomb and attack us.
And in fact, Israel's attack came after an IAEA report this week suggesting that Iran was bucking all of its obligations under international law, developing nuclear weapons. And apparently, as of this morning, Prime Minister Netanyahu held talks with world leaders, including world leaders with whom he's not particularly friendly, including the Prime Minister of France, Germany, India. And there are more conversations expected soon. Apparently, those leaders are expressing understanding for what Israel did, considering the nature of that IAEA report.
Absolutely. And I would add to that, you have the IE report, which talked about the uranium, that they have enough enriched uranium to produce many bombs, not one, many bombs, 2 digits. You look at the ballistic missiles. They wanted to be at the same level of the U.S. and Russia when it comes to the number of ballistic missiles. So it was mass production. And you look at the proxies. They were preparing the proxies for another invasion into Israel. So when you put all those 3 elements together, you realize that our intelligence was very strong, and we decided not to wait, but to take the preemptive approach.
So going forward, obviously, the IDF has talked about the possibility of heavier attacks over the course of coming weeks. This is only the beginning. Israel's dominance of the Iranian airspace is astonishing. I mean, Israeli airplanes are refueling in the airspace over Iran and doing daylight raids. I mean, essentially operating with impunity above the airspace in Iran. How long do you expect the operations are going to last? And when will Israel have achieved its strategic goals here?
Well, it just started, a few hours ago. It's not going to be a short operation. I think it will require more efforts from our side. It also depends on the retaliation from Iran into our civilian population. But we are determined to finish the job. For years we heard the threats, and history have taught us to take very seriously radical regimes who threaten the Jewish people. And as long as it takes, we are willing to pay the price. The Israeli people, even though we are in the middle of a war in Gaza, the people are ready and committed to allow the government and the military to finish the job.
Ambassador Danny Danon, Israel's ambassador to the UN, leading voice in the Likud party. Really appreciate your time and your insight.
Thank you very much, Ben.
Alrighty, coming up, folks, the left, they seem to believe that if they just yell at things, this is somehow going to be a massive boon to them. We'll get to a bunch of leftists yelling at Republicans, like this is a strategy. First, ever wonder what gives elite athletes, business moguls, high performers their edge? Many have been turning to Armra colostrum. This remarkable superfood is nature's original whole food supplement containing over 400 bioactive nutrients that work at cellular level. Armra helps build lean muscle, speeds up recovery time, enhances overall performance without relying on artificial stimulants or synthetic ingredients. Whether you're running a company, pushing your limits in training, or simply looking for a natural advantage in your daily life, Armra colostrum optimizes your body's systems for peak performance and sustained energy. Research has demonstrated that colostrum does more than just strengthen performance. It enhances your body's ability to absorb essential nutrients, supports the development of lean muscle mass, and improves endurance. At the same time, it works at the cellular level to accelerate repair and regeneration, helping you bounce back faster after intense physical exertion. Plus, Armra colostrum can also support your microbiome and balance and strengthen immune defenses throughout the body. Who doesn't want a stronger immune system? We've worked out a special offer for my audience. Receive 15% off your very first order. Go to tryarmra.com/Shapiro or enter Shapiro to get 15% off your first order. That's TRYARMRA.com/Shapiro. Meanwhile, joining us on the line is Doron Spielman. He, of course, is the former IDF International spokesperson, former VP of the City of David, and New York Times bestselling author of When the Stones Speak, to give us more insight into the actual activities on the ground. Doron, thanks so much for taking the time. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, Ben, and good morning.
So first of all, we've been taking a look at all of the fallout from the Israeli series of attacks last night, this morning. It has continued into full daylight. I think people need to understand from the Israeli perspective and from the military perspective just how dominant this performance has been by the Israeli Air Force. I mean, there's refueling going on over Iranian airspace of Israeli military jets. Iran is effectively naked in the air right now. How extensive is Israel's control of the airspace?
At this point, it's complete. I mean, this is the most precision strike, not only in Israeli history, but in world history. What you have here right now, it's incredible. You have Israeli fighter jets that simultaneously took out the Iranian leadership. You had an inside Mossad plan that took out the nuclear scientists, and you had their ballistic missile facilities all go up in air in 5 minutes. And then Israelis were sent into their shelters before we knew anything, just to make sure that we woke up and knew that something was going on. At this point in time, Ben, Iran is in our hands completely. All we need is time to finish this. And I see wave after wave taking place. And the refueling, by the way, I'm seeing online, Syrians are filming the refueling over their heads. I mean, this is happening over the skies of the Middle East.
So I think that folks need to understand the timeline here, that without the last year and a half of Israeli action in Lebanon, yes, in Gaza, against the Houthis, the fall of Syria, none of this is possible. Israel spent a year and a half, the IDF and the IAF, destroying all of the various tentacles of the Iranian regime. Iran, of course, entered into 2 rounds of fighting with Israel where they fired 2 series of missiles at Israel ineffectually. And then in the last round, Israel basically took out all of Iran's air defenses. And so when we say that Israel has complete control over Iranian airspace, we have to understand that Iran is located 1,700 miles from Israel. It is 2,500 kilometers from Israel. And what that means is that all of the intervening airspace also has to be clear. So what you're talking about here is the culmination of a sea change in Middle Eastern politics.
No question. It's like a chessboard where the other person is 2,000 miles away from you, and they have put their pawns, they have their knights, and they have their king and queen. The mistake that Iran made was they played their pawns. We were hit by all their proxies. They thought that they could destroy us. Israel took out all the proxies. Then came the middle range. That was what was happening in October. When they shot those ballistic missiles at us, we eliminated all the knights that are surrounding the king. Today, we cleared out everyone. All that's left right now is the Ayatollah. He's looking around, knocking on doors of the defense minister gone, head of chief of staff gone, head of the Air Force gone, the replacement for the head of the Air Force gone. Israel right now has completely, in the most genius move ever, all you have left standing right now is the king, and he has no one else around. He's the naked emperor right now.
I think that last point is really important because there are so many foes of Israel, and I think of the West, who have been suggesting that if Israel were to take this sort of action, it would lead to a widespread war or regional war or a massive conflagration, not understanding the reality, which is that the only way that anything would lead to a conflagration, a serious regional conflagration with Iran. It's if Iran got a nuclear weapon, because right now Iran was essentially naked and alone. They had been defanged. All of their forward operating bases had essentially been destroyed or degraded to the point where nothing could happen. And so no one is coming to Iran's rescue. China is not coming to Iran's rescue. Russia is not coming to Iran's rescue. The Arab states are celebrating, despite the kind of crocodile tear statement from the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. No one is happier today than Mohammed bin Salman to watch as Israel absolutely devastates Iran's nuclear capacity and military capacity. Again, this I think was the driving force, because the question I think a lot of folks have is why now, right? Why not 6 months ago? Why not 6 months in the future? How immediate was the threat? What is your understanding of why Israel decided that now was the moment to go?
I think that we're about to lose our visibility. And people have to understand this about intelligence. People kind of are addicted to movies. They think that you're inside the room. I mean, sometimes we are, but usually intelligence, you're triangulating from a number of different sources. When your enemy is so close to developing a nuclear weapon, and they have enriched the uranium, they've ordered the refueling from China, it's about to land at the port, Israel is about to be blocked out. And what they do behind a few doors, they could come out tomorrow and they would have 9 or 15 atomic bombs. And it's interesting. I was on a news interview with a left-wing news interview, and they said, well, how do you know that this is actually working? And my answer is very simple, because when they responded, they're responding with UAVs and not with an atomic weapon. Had this taken place in another month, Ben, or another 3 months, by the way, it's not only Israel. The first people that they would probably warn would be the United States. It's much easier to hit a U.S. base in Syria, where they're left open, or in Iraq. And can you imagine the U.S. if there was a nuclear threat against their army personnel in this area? So by striking now, Israel, it's not only precise, it sends a very, very clear message.
So meanwhile, there was a lot of consternation, a lot of heartburn over the relationship between the United States and Israel leading up to this attack. Obviously, President Trump had stated very clearly that he wanted negotiations. Steve Witkoff, the special envoy, had been engaged in negotiations with Iran. It appears from all available information that over the course of the last couple of weeks, the United States came to the quite clear and correct conclusion that Iran was simply stalling. They had no intention of giving up their nuclear program. The IAEA report that came out a little bit earlier this week saying that Iran was already cheating on its nuclear obligations may have been sort of the death knell of any real negotiation. What do you think was the level of coordination here? Obviously, you have a bit of conflicting information. The Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, made a statement that Israel acted on its own. And then President Trump suggested that there was, in fact, advanced knowledge of the attacks and that it was connected with the American negotiating strategy. What do you think is the truth about the levels of actual knowledge by the United States, coordination, and why was it done this way?
I don't think that there's any daylight between the U.S. and Israel. I really don't, Ben. And I think that Israel, yes, we wanted to attack a couple months ago. President Trump said, I'm going to exhaust my diplomatic solution. He just posted on Truth Social a few minutes ago that he gave them 60 days to negotiate. And today is the 61st day. And because they made that mistake, those same people won't be coming back to the negotiation table because they've been sent up into meet their maker, who I don't think is very happy with them at this point in time. But in any case, that's what we're looking at. We're looking at the Israel understood this. Now that we've struck, in my opinion, again, I don't have absolute verification for this. I know, or it's been reported, that the cabinet meeting last night was to create a ruse so that Iran would think that Israel is still debating about this, while at the same time, our jets were already on their way. And I wouldn't be surprised if the U.S. words that have been coming out the last few days were very reserved in order to help our enemies go to sleep. Let's keep in mind the people that we took out, the 76 major commanders and their seconds we took out, they were all struck in their homes, except for one small group. I mean, they were sleeping. They were completely taken by surprise, except one aerial group, which means the ruse worked. So,
Doron, one of the things that we were talking about off air briefly is you were suggesting that the internet around Iran was essentially taken out, that Iran's communications capacity has been dramatically degraded. Talk about that a little bit.
Even I, before this went out, was contacted by somebody by Iran on my WhatsApp saying, go Israel. I have it in my WhatsApp. Iranians have been sending as much information as they can to Israel. Israeli news stations, undercover cameras have been taking place over the last few months, showing what's happening inside of Iran. The Iranian people, after Israel, they're the happiest people in the world. And when you know that Iran takes down their internet, the national IRGC, it's for one reason. They don't want the Iranian people to be able to send a message to the world, we're happy. let Israel continue what they're doing. We want to be free of this terror. It's the last ditch of control. And I think, Ben, if you ask me, this is a message to the world. I mean, Israel were the size of my fingernail, right? The rest of the world needs to see this. They threatened Israel. We took them out. We've disabled the regime. There's no nukes. It is time for the world to go in and replace this regime for the Iranian people. And so, can you imagine? Can anyone listening to this now imagine waking up one morning and saying, wow, Iran is no longer a threat? The people of Iran, that is right now in our hands. The question is the world going to follow up on what Israel's doing bravely and courageously and pretty much alone?
Well, I mean, it looks like that is going to have to be initiated from within Iran. And the Iranian people have tried this multiple times before, but the regime has literally never been weaker than it is right now. Iran, for its part, is suggesting massive retaliation against Israel. Obviously, Israel is prepared for this. Israel's been preparing for this for months, if not years, at this point. So far, there have been a few desultory drone attacks from Iran. There were expectations that there would be, at least by this point, significant missile barrages coming the other way from Iran. But it appears that one of the things that the Israeli Air Force did was take out a huge cache of ballistic missiles that Iran was preparing to shoot surface to surface against Israel.
No question. We took out the missiles, and we also took out the command and control structure. Right now, I mean, it's hilarious. If you look at the Ayatollah very, very quickly put people in to replace these people that have not nearly the same level of experience. There's no one there calling the shots right now. This is not Hamas, a little ragtag regime of fighters that know how to break off and splinter and fight. Iran is an army that have lost the head of the army, their chief of staff, the head of their Air Force. There's no one calling the shots right now. They can't even pick up the pieces. And by the way, we are getting more and more reports that the initial attack that we made on the Natanz nuclear site has now been followed up by additional attacks. Every hour, we're getting more and more reports that Israel's just moving through. And so therefore, I think there will be a response. I don't think it's going to create the kind of damage that Iran would like it to do, but he has to show some sign of force in the coming days. But, for the Iranian people, to your point, they're going to rise up. But if the world doesn't meet them halfway, the one thing Iran has been is they have guns. And they will simply shoot down those people in the streets. They've got to be airdropped weapons. And again, the world has to be courageous. We're the Jews. We were in the ghetto for 2,000 years. We hid. Now we know we can't hide. We have to fight, so we fight. The world cannot hide. You might think you can hide. You cannot hide. Take out this enemy right now. Be brave. Be courageous. And then we can actually see the bright side of another day on this.
Well, that is Doron Spielman. Check out his brand new book, When the Stones Speak, New York Times bestseller. He's the former vice president of the city of David. Doron, thanks so much for your time and your insight. Thank
you so much, Ben.
Now, meanwhile, as we say, President Trump has been urging the Iranian government to come back to the negotiating table, saying, guys, I warned you. I mean, he's literally saying this on Truth Social. I warned you. I gave you 2 months. You guys kept screwing around. You kept saying that you didn't want to give up your nuclear capacity. And now this is what happens to you. So, you could theoretically come back to the table. Iran has said no. So according to The Hill, Iran no longer plans to engage in nuclear talks with the United States that were scheduled to take place in Oman on Sunday. Oman news agency and Iranian state media reported that the talks have been suspended indefinitely. Oman Foreign Minister Badr al-Busaidi, who of course is a cutout for Iran, said Israel's unilateral attack on Iran is illegal, unjustifiable, and a grave threat to regional security and stability. Again, the irony of Iranian proxy saying this is lost, I would imagine, on few people. I condemn it and urge the global community to come together to reject Israeli aggression and support de-escalation and diplomacy. But of course, it was Iran that had been consistently upping the ante, saying that diplomacy was not going to actually result in anything. The Iranian Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei said, with this crime, the Zionist regime has set itself up for a bitter and painful fate, and it will receive it. I mean, these sorts of threats are continuously being made, obviously, all the time. Now, the question is what comes next? There are questions as to whether the United States, given the fact that Iran has now pulled out and said that the negotiations are over, whether the United States, there are a few options. The United States could just let Israel continue doing the bombing raid. It's not like the United States is going to step in and stop Israel from doing that. And Israel has every intention of going forward regardless. There's also the possibility that some of these bunkers are incredibly deep and America flies one raid over some of these bunkers and knocks out a couple of the nuclear facilities wholesale with a B-2 or a B-52. And I think that is significantly less likely. And the tactic that the administration has taken, which is arguable but justifiable, is that if Israel acts alone, then Iran will be less likely to attack American military personnel in the region, knowing that if they were to do that and draw America in, America would go absolutely ape bleep and just eviscerate the Iranian oil fields. And we'll have to see what Iran's response is. So far, it has been not even lackluster. Lackluster would be too strong a word for the Iranian response thus far. They've sent a few desultory drones toward Israel that were shot down. Their missile capacity seems to have been wildly degraded by the Israelis at this point. And so again, we'll have to wait to see what the weekend brings. Suffice it to say, the sort of insane suggestion that there was going to be a broader World War III level event led off by Israel destroying the Iranian nuclear facilities and taking out some of their military leaders, that, of course, turned out to be not even remotely true. Not even remotely true. Because you have to be ignorant to believe there's going to be a ground invasion of Iran that follows hard upon this, or that China or Russia or the BRICS countries, as Tucker Carlson suggested, were going to get involved in a war to defend Iran. Like, that was not going to be a thing. So, obviously, we'll keep an eye on all of this. Meanwhile, in news closer to home, yesterday, the big conflagration of the day, and this guy must be super sad, Senator Alex Padilla of California. He must be having the worst day ever, because yesterday was his big moment, his moment to shine. So there was a press conference held by Kristi Noem, the Secretary of Homeland Security, to talk about the fact that there were, in fact, federal forces working in Los Angeles to quell rioting. And Senator Alex Padilla, no one knows his name and no one knows who he is. He decided it would be an amazing job to simply charge into the middle of this press conference. And again, she wasn't taking questions. There were no outsiders in the room. And he's so anonymous that security did not recognize him. And so he was pushed out of the room while shouting at Kristi Noem. And this, of course, was a grandstanding attempt to get attention, because the entire Democratic Party is now about getting attention. The entire Democratic Party is now about grandstanding. So Senator Alex Padilla thought he was going to have himself a day, and then Israel attacked Iran, relegating this schmuck to the back pages of the newspapers. In any case, here's the video of what happened.
I'm Senator Alex Padilla. I have questions for the Secretary, because the fact of the matter is a half a dozen violent criminals that you're rotating on your hands off.
And then he says, get hands off, and he starts to resist the agents who are pushing him out of the room, at which point they put him on the ground and they handcuff him. And this is the end of the world, according to the left. According to the left, this is fascism in action, is when you, an anonymous-looking senator from California, whom no one knows, when you barge into a press conference with the Secretary of Homeland Security and start making your way up toward the front while yelling at her, and then you are pushed out by security, this is the end of the world. Secretary of Homeland Security Kristi Noem explained exactly what happened.
We were conducting a press conference to update everyone on the enforcement actions that are ongoing to bring peace to the city of Los Angeles. And this man burst into the room, started lunging towards the podium, interrupting me and elevating his voice, and was stopped, did not identify himself, and was removed from the room. So as soon as he identified himself, appropriate actions were taken. But I would say that, I had a conversation with the senator after this. We sat down for 10 to 15 minutes and talked about the fact that nobody knew who he was. He didn't say who he was, that until he was already had been lunging forward and people were trying to detain him for quite a period of time. And that this, we're leaders, we're public servants. And if he had requested a meeting, I would have loved to have sat down and had a conversation with him. That coming into a press conference like this is political theater. It's wrong, and it does a disservice to this country and the people who live here.
Of course, Kristi Noem is correct about this. Homeland Security released a tweet saying, quote, Senator Padilla chose disrespectful political theater and interrupted a live press conference without identifying himself or having his Senate security pin on as he lunged toward Secretary Noem. Mr. Padilla was told repeatedly to back away and did not comply with officers' repeated commands. Secret Service thought he was an attacker. Officers acted appropriately. Secretary Noem met with Senator Padilla after and held a 15-minute meeting. Okay, so nothing bad happened here. It's all performative stupidity by Democrats attempting to gain a headline. It accomplished nothing. It's unbelievably stupid. If, in fact, he wanted to have a conversation with Kristi Noem, he could have just picked up the phone. Right? That's all. Well, according to Democrats, this is the end of democracy in America. Democracy is now over. Senator Cory Booker put on his angry eyes, Mr. Potato Head, and decided to scream some more because he also needs attention. And if you start seeing Democrats as 5-year-olds in desperate need of attention, then it all begins to make sense. Here's Senator Cory Booker popping the angry eyes and going crazy. Here we go.
If you could make Alex Padilla forcibly kneel before this executive, when does it stop? He's a United States senator. And if you could force him to kneel to his knees violently, when does it stop?
When does it stop? No, my God, no. Okay, so just going to point out that he been cray. He been super cray because nothing happened. Padilla went in. No one knew who he was. Listen, if Alex Padilla walked down a street near you, you would have no idea who he is. He is not among the 75 most well-known American senators, and he's from California, the most populous American state. He is an absolute non-entity, Alex Padilla. You would not know him from Adam. You wouldn't. And neither did security. So they did what they are supposed to do. But according to Chuck Schumer, this was the end of the American Republic. Guys, this crap ain't going to play. It just ain't. If this is the best you got, you are toast.
Mr. President, I just saw something that sickened my stomach. The manhandling of a United States senator. We need immediate answers to what the hell went on.
What the hell? We need answers. So many. And it was the entire Democratic Party. They have found their rallying point. Their rallying point is a middle-aged senator being pushed out of a room, handcuffed, and then released within like 10 minutes. Speaker of the House, former Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, put in her dentures. And she said, this assault is not only on Senator Alex Padilla, but on freedom of speech and expression in our country. These actions taken by Trump's DHS communicates a message to all Americans that none of us is safe. Okay, I'm just going to point out all of us are safe. We're fine. When was the last time you decided to crash the Secretary of Homeland Security's press conference while yelling at her without wearing any sort of identifying insignia at all? But don't worry, this is the moment when the resistance came to get, or not. Representative Bonnie Watson-Coleman said, absolutely unacceptable. This is outrageous behavior. Assaulting a sitting U.S. senator in public on camera. Imagine how they treat everyday folks in the dark of night. Federal agents are not above the law. Yeah, whatever, man. Meanwhile, Ro Khanna, representative from California, he said, a United States senator seeking clarification from a cabinet secretary should not be assaulted or treated like this. Well, I mean, that seems like not a good description of what you just saw on that tape. That did not seem like seeking clarification. Seeking clarification is where you say, pardon, madam, but what did you mean by X? Not, Hulk breakthrough wall, Kool-Aid man, oh yeah, Senator Alex Padilla. Like, really? But Alex Padilla himself had the final word. He wants money. Yeah, it's a fundraising pitch. Who could have predicted?
So I had the audacity to try to ask a question. I introduced myself. I'm Senator Alex Padilla, and I have a question. And it took all of maybe a second for multiple agents to forcibly remove me from the room, to pin me on the ground and handcuff me. Now, I'm okay. For people who are wondering how I'm doing, I'm okay. But the big lesson here is if they can do that to me, if they're willing to do that to me, a United States senator with a question, doing my job on behalf of the people of California and our country, what are they doing to a lot of the folks that are out there when the cameras are not on?
Oh my goodness. They're not bringing their best, folks. They're not sending their best. But again, it is all about the posturing for the Democrats these days because they ain't got nothing. They really don't. Their points of differentiation with the Trump administration are so weak, and on most of them, they happen to be in the wrong with the American people. So this is what every representative is now going to do. There's a representative named Salud Carbajo who is questioning the Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth. And again, it's all just posturing. It's all prima donna nonsense. This is in Congress yesterday.
Do you think political allegiance to Trump is a requirement for serving our nation, either in uniform or a civilian in the department?
I'm incredibly proud, as are millions of Americans.
No. Not today, Hegseth. Yes or no?
Congressman, you know what a silly question that is.
But silly enough to warrant a very straightforward answer. Yes or no?
We all support and defend the Constitution of the United States.
You know what? I'm not going to waste my time anymore. You're not worthy of my attention or my questions. You're an embarrassment to this country. You're unfit to lead. And there's been bipartisan members of Congress that have called for your resignation. You should just get the hell out and let somebody competently lead this department.
Mr. Chairman, do we not have any decorum in here?
Thank you very much. I yield my time.
Gentleman yields back.
No. The posturing. Yeah, now you're slightly more famous. No one had heard of you before. Now people who listen to the show may have heard of Salud Carvajal, but that's about it. And I think that Secretary Hegseth's response is indeed quite proper, which is just laughter. Meanwhile, Senator Michael Bennet of Colorado felt the necessity to scream at somebody. Again, Democrats have been relegated to what if we just scream? They've all turned into the meme from 2016 of that rather overweight woman in the glasses and the beret screaming into the ether because President Trump won. That's what they've been reduced to. They're just screaming at people now. Here's Senator Michael Bennet screaming at Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, to his bemusement.
We did not get here. We inherited this fiscal situation that I believe.
Well, you inherited from Donald Trump, who was here. You did, Mr. Bessent.
No,
yes,
sir.
You did, Mr. Bessent.
No,
you inherited from Donald Trump. He's the first president to come back after a 4-year hiatus, after we know exactly what the last tax cuts did, which was blow a massive hole in our deficit and debt. You can't sit here and lie about that. It's true. The data, to coin a phrase, the data shows that that's the result. The math shows that that is the result. No one on this side of the aisle admits anymore that or claims anymore that they didn't blow a huge hole in the deficit. They did. And now you're here saying to the American people, let's double down on that.
Oh, the screaming. Oh, the yelling. Oh, the pontificating. Honestly, you want a better Congress? Take the cameras out of the hearing rooms. Seriously. I mean, listen, they're fun. I've gone to my share of hearings where I've owned some Congress people. You can view all those online. They're fun. But I'm not sure that the cameras have been amazing for the American body politic because it's just a way for all of these legislators to read their little speeches and then grandstand as much as possible. But the reality is that when it comes down to what Democratic policy is on key issues of the day, they are just out of touch with the American people. So yesterday, an astonishing exchange between a member of the LA City Council named Imelda Padilla talking to the LAPD chief, a guy named Jim McDonald. And she literally asked the head of the LAPD to violate federal law.
What can your department do to do more to warn us, to warn the business community that outside of our LA borders, coming in from Inglewood, coming in from Antelope Valley, I don't know, you can warn us so that we can warn our folks in the spirit of your loyalty to the city of Los Angeles.
So you're asking me to warn you about an enforcement action being taken by another agency before it happens?
Yeah.
Yeah, we can't do that.
Why not?
That would be obstruction of justice. You may want to talk to the city attorney about that.
Oh, boy. But this is what they would like. This is what many Democrats would like, is for the LAPD to be told to actively violate the law, and then they would be arrested by the members of the federal government. Well, Democrats were trying to claim a victory lap yesterday based on President Trump's statements online regarding his immigration policy. So President Trump put out a statement yesterday, quote, "Our great farmers and people in the hotel and leisure business have been stating that our very aggressive policy on immigration is taking very good long-time workers away from them, with those jobs being almost impossible to replace. In many cases, the criminals allowed into our country by the very stupid Biden open borders policy are applying for those jobs. This is not good. We must protect our farmers, but get the criminals out of the United States. Changes are coming." So this led Gavin Newsom to triumphantly announce that he was victorious, that now that President Trump has said that he is not going to deport a bunch of migrant farm workers or members of the leisure and hospitality business who are illegal immigrants, Gavin Newsom put out a statement. "Turns out chasing hardworking people through ranches and farms and snatching women and children off the streets is not good policy." Well, cool, because that wasn't the policy. That actually was never the policy. Now, President Trump has moved the Overton window dramatically on illegal immigration. Dramatically. Now, no one who watches this issue thought, truly speaking, that President Trump was going to deport all 20 million illegal immigrants in the United States. President Trump likes to talk about absolutes because that is the language of politics. He understands people get that language. We're going to deport everybody. But in reality, everyone who watches the policy knew that President Trump, as a pragmatist, was never going to spend what it would cost to deport 20 million people. You're talking on the order of somewhere between $6 $800 billion just to do those deportations. President Trump was never going to do that, which is why he so far has been focusing on criminal illegal immigrants. But because Trump said that he's not going to focus on, say, farm workers and leisure and hospitality workers, now Gavin Newsom is trying to claim victory. Well, the truth is that Gavin Newsom is now playing in Donald Trump's sandbox. I'll explain in a moment.
So just moments ago, Donald Trump made a major reversal in his mass deportation policy. Indiscriminately, he's been sending armed agents into farms and fields and ranches all throughout California and increasingly across the country. I was in Oxnard, California yesterday. I met with a 12-year-old boy. Tears pouring down his face. His mom and dad snatched by agents. They were working the fields for over 20 years. He doesn't know where they are. He has no family in the United States. He's here alone, a sixth grader. Donald Trump may not care about him, but he's finally listening to you, calling out these indiscriminate acts of cruelty. Let's keep up the pressure and let's do it peacefully.
So again, Gavin Newsom is now claiming the Democrats in the streets being jacked forced President Trump off the point here. The notion that President Trump was ever going to start deporting en masse hospitality workers who are legal immigrants or farm workers who are legal immigrants, that's fantasy. It is. President Trump has said that before. And President Trump himself has talked about the dependence of so many industries upon illegal. Now, again, you can make a very strong case, and I have colleagues who do, that it would be beneficial for the United States to deport everyone. But in a realistic, pragmatic way, that was never going to be the case, ever. And here's where Gavin Newsom is playing Donald Trump's sandbox. Donald Trump has completely ended the conversation about the southern border. That conversation is over. It is closed. Democrats lost. Joe Biden opened that border wide. Donald Trump closed it. That is one of the signal victories in politics of my lifetime. Truly, one of the great victories in the history of American politics is moving from completely open border to completely closed border in the space of one day, which is what President Trump did. And you won't see Gavin Newsom advocating for an open border anymore. Why? Because he lost the argument. Gavin Newsom's sanctuary city policies don't just protect farm workers or people working janitorial jobs. They protect criminals. President Trump won that debate. And so Gavin Newsom is forced to argue on the margins of the actual issue. He's forced to argue on the, quote, most innocent illegal immigrants. Right? He can't actually argue to the heart of the issue. I want to see Gavin Newsom, if he wants to win the ideological battle with Donald Trump, I want to see Gavin Newsom make the argument that the border ought to be open and that we ought not deport criminal illegal immigrants and that actual immigration enforcement overall is a bad thing. Because that's the argument being made in the streets. That is not the argument that Gavin Newsom is making there. Gavin Newsom is making the argument that you really shouldn't raid some sort of farm and pick up a dude who's picking the vegetables out of the ground. And President Trump's like, okay, maybe that's true. Sure. I mean, that's not top priority. And Gavin Newsom's, you conceded the point. That's not where the argument was. And the argument has moved so far in the direction of President Trump that Democrats are forced to tacitly admit he was right about shutting the border and that he is correct about deporting criminal illegal immigrants. And if, by the way, if they want criminal illegal immigrants deported, then they might actually want to stop with their sanctuary city and sanctuary state policies. So no, it's not a loss for President Trump. It's not a big L for President Trump to say he's not deporting leisure and farm workers. That was not going to be a top priority for the administration ever, ever. And when President Trump talked about mass deportations, he never meant 20 million people. Okay, again, I know there are people who disagree with me, who get upset, but that's just the reality. President Trump is a pragmatist. He always was a pragmatist. He is somebody who operates in the realm of reality, from Iran to the border. That is what he does. So, no, I mean, I don't see Gavin Newsom winning any big victories over here. Alrighty, folks, the show continues for our members right now. It turns out the left, they're going to have big rallies tomorrow, supposedly. But how big are the rallies? We'll get to that in a moment. Remember, in order to watch, you have to be a member. If you're not a member, become a member. Use code Shapiro. Check out for 2 months free on all annual plans. Click that link in the description and join us.